So Jody and Emmett go to this dinner. While they're at the dinner, they're sitting right across from Teague and Courtney. So we're going to catch you up where they are at the dinner table. Jody is a little jealous and she can't believe that Teague brought her to this dinner. And she's making her feel like an outsider, but she's not alone. Darla's husband, Bucky, is also joining in on the fun. They've cracked a joke at Miss Courtney's expense that she can't catch on to. Um, let's see here. So then the group, we're going to catch up where she finds out that Jody's not, uh, or we've the date that Courtney's with. I'll say it in a minute. The date that Jody brought is a lawyer, and she's like, "So are you a cowboy too?" And he's like, "No, I'm a lawyer." But it doesn't even phase Courtney because she's so locked in on Teague. Okay, so let's see here. On second thought, you've probably never been to a rodeo. The horses back on their own, Teague told Courtney. It's automatic. Courtney gave Teague a gentle slap on the arm. Oh, this is page 119, going to 120, 121. You cowboys are just so modest. I know it takes a lot of training to make a good bucking horse. Mercifully, the group's president was at the podium banging the gavel, so the game was at a halt. The speaker droned through the minutes from the last meeting, and they all eyed from the group, and when he asked for their approval, when everybody sang a couple cowboy song, they always sang it was goofy, but it was long-standing Rotary tradition. Today the songs were Home on the Range and Don't Fence Me In. As usual, Darla's dramatic soprano sailed above the crowd, giving the simple song an operatic boost. Teague moved his mouth along with the words, but Jody could tell he really wasn't singing. She could hear Emmett's passable tenor beside her and did the best to keep her own voice on key. Courtney made a game effort, but she didn't know the words and soon fell silent. Her purse was another story, though. As Darla's voice rose into a high tremolo and the purse let out a single soaring note high-pitched as a police siren, Courtney gave that bag a nudge with her foot and the noise stopped. Some ringtone, Teague whispered as the song ended. Oh no, that's Honey Bucket, Courtney said. She opened the purse and tilted it forward, showing its contents to the table mates. Her tiny apricot colorful puffball of a dog was nestled inside. Courtney made a kissing noise, and his bright eyes smiled through the face of itself out of the purse. Honey Bucket, Jody said, trying not to laugh. Such a cute name. He's a teacup Pomeranian, Courtney said. I take him everywhere. Jody imagined Teague taking Luna with him to the Rotary meetings, and then the collie would have all the members rounded up in a corner by now. So what does it do? Bucky added dubiously, nodding toward the tiny dog. Ranchers expected a pet to have a purpose, like herding cows or keeping rabbits down, but this little guy looked useless. He loves me, Courtney smiled and tucked the little dog's head back to the purse. Shh, baby, you're not supposed to be here, she whispered. She wagged a warning finger at the pup. Don't you get us in trouble now. And now our speaker of the day, the president intoned. I'm sure you all remember Jody Brand from her Miss Rodeo USA. She was stating a non-profit venture, and I think you all will be interested in supporting Jody. She stood and brushed her imaginary crumbs off her lap, then put her best rodeo queen smile and headed up to the front of the room. It was time to shine. Moving forward, page 124, 125. Courtney nudged Teague's shoulder. She was a rodeo queen? She gave Jody an assessing look. She looks like a field hand. Jody wasn't just any old rodeo queen, Teague said. She was Miss Rodeo USA. She modeled for Wrangler. Accomplishments like that were good things. He hated the whole rodeo queen thing. Jody had always been from another class, another world. But her crown had even taken that away from him. Rodeo queens were old-fashioned Western values, home, family, and all the things Treadwells were hopelessly bad at. Well, she sure doesn't dress or look like a rodeo queen now, Courtney sniffed, as if she's a model. What is she doing here? She's just told you, Teague spoke sharply, and Courtney narrowed his eyes for half a second before they caught herself, and then pasted on a flirty smile. Well, she said she needs older horses, already trained ones. I guess she's not a real cowgirl, not brave like you. She squeezed his arm again. Training those big, mean bucking horses the way you do. I just can't get over that. Well, working with the handicapped kids is a lot more than a contribution to society. Courtney suggested, or shrugged, but you need funding for something like that, and it doesn't look like she's going to get anything out of this group. She looked up at the ceiling and tapped her chin with a manicured finger, pantomiming deep thoughts. What she needs to do is a fundraiser. Like a spaghetti dinner or a raffle? Oh, no, nothing like that. I was thinking something bigger. Like what? Like a polo benefit. She straightened in her seat, back on her familiar ground. My dad and his friends have all kind of money, but they don't much like parting with it unless it's something to do with polo. So you want us to put on some kind of polo party? It wasn't a bad idea. Jody was only working at the boutique until she could get at the clinic started, so the faster she got funding, the less time she'd be spending around her mother. Maybe then she'd forget all about that stupid promise. Especially if Teague did a lot of fundraising and helped with the clinic and generally made himself indispensable. He felt a wish of excitement lift in his heart. When he really did set his mind to something, he always succeeded. That's how he always worked the way out of the trailer. If he applied the same dogged determination to the project, he might not have to give up on Jody after all. He wouldn't push her. He wouldn't try to talk her into anything. He'd just be the best friend she ever had and let nature take its course. We could put on a barbecue after the game, he said. Courtney wrinkled her nose. No, they wouldn't come to anything like that. I was thinking an actual polo match. That sounds like a big project, Bucky said. And I guess that's the end of that, although I didn't mark that. Okay. Page 150, 151, and 152. Don't tell my mom that. She's a dead set against Teague. Well, you aren't going to let that stop you, are you? I mean, my parents were all for Cal, and look what happened. Only you know what's right for you. I should have listened to my heart, and you should have listened to yours. Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's in my heart that's telling me that Teague's the one, Jody said. I think some other areas are chiming in. Sissy giggled, I bet. And my mother has a point. Stuff like Cal did, like Teague's father did, runs in the family. Teague might be okay now, but he's pretty quick to use his fists. You never know what might happen if he really got mad or frustrated. Sissy stared at her, open-mouthed. Jody, how can you believe that? Teague hated his father. He never even hit a woman. Jody shrugged. That's just stupid. Don't let your mom tell you what to do. I have to. Jody forked up a mouthful of salad greens and then held them suspended over her plate. I came here to make things right with my mom. I treated her like dirt, Sissy, and she's been nothing but good about it. So what did you do? I blamed her when my dad died. Jody set the forkful down of uneaten. I left her for school right after that, and I wouldn't take her calls or anything. I didn't even speak to her for years. Sissy shrugged. So it took you some time to process your grief. Years, Sissy. I was downright mean. I was grieving too, and instead of helping her cope, I disappeared. I wish I could change the way I acted, but I can't. So I'm doing everything I can to make it up to her now. If she doesn't want to see me with Teague, that's a small sacrifice to make. Small sacrifice? Sissy shook her head. Have you looked at him lately? I try not to, Jody grinned. Really, seriously, my priority is to straighten things out with my mom, and I think that she has a point about Teague. I know he helped you, Sissy, but he was in jail himself, for God's sakes. He was a kid who got into a few too many fights. A kid whose first impulse is to smack somebody when things don't go his way. Come on, Jody, half the time was because his kids were giving Troy a hard time. Teague's first impulse is to protect the people he loves. I know, Jody sighed and ate a shred of her salad, thinking, I just need to take care of my family first, you know? Maybe she'll change her mind about Teague someday. I hope so, Sissy said. I love you both, and I'd love to see you together, but I'm not going to tell you what to do or anything. I know, it's okay, Jody said. Teague did a lot for you, and I don't blame you for defending him. She munched another mouthful, then pointed her fork at Sissy while swallowing. So when does Cal get out? Tuesday, and he doesn't know that you're staying? Sissy shook her head. No. And if he finds out, I'll be okay. I've got Teague on speed dial. 150, 151, 152. Okay, looks like 177 is a very short paragraph. But she promised, and she reminded herself, and Teague couldn't be trusted. He'd given her that look before, all those years ago, and when she said goodbye, but it had disappeared from his face as suddenly and surely as it had been erased. And even now, there was Courtney. Jody couldn't quite figure out that situation. Moving forward. Oh, another small paragraph, 189. Take Courtney home. She's upset and she keeps crying. He spreads his hands helplessly. Her horse is in the barn. I don't know what to say. Jody's eyes narrowed. Do you want me to comfort her? Not really. He met her eyes. Honestly, Jody, there's nothing going on between us. I don't even like her. He hated to admit the weakness, but he needed to make Jody understand that she's after me and I can't seem to get away. Jody grinned. You're scared, aren't you? You bet, he said. She's a very scary girl. Page 197. So did you ease Courtney's worried mind? Yeah, it was nothing, he said. She just likes to stir up trouble. No kidding. She poured the tea, almost sloshing it over the edge of the glass, then slapped the lemon onto the cutting board beside the stove and got a knife out of the drawer below. She turned to face Teague and he backed away, his palms out at the chest level as if he was warding her off. Easy there, he said. Watch that knife. Sorry, she sighed, and he lowered his hands as she turned and sliced the lemon into wedges. I just hate to see that you're getting involved with somebody who don't understand Troy. I mean, you heard her talking about making him mind. I told you I'm not involved with her. Jody tossed a disbelieving glare. Why, you jealous? He was giving her that sneaky grin, the one that said he caught her looking at him or thinking about him or being jealous, but he was at the wrong this time. She gave a lemon a final whack and he flinched. There was no reason to be even civil to someone who talks about Troy like that. Teague leaned against the counter. I know how you feel, but you might as well get used to it, since half of the population doesn't get who Troy is, and you don't have to give people a chance to learn. It wasn't that she didn't understand. It wasn't just that she didn't understand, Jody said. It was that she didn't want to. She was so upset at the notion she might have to take orders from him that she was about ready to quit. I just wish she had. Yeah, I know, but it's our job to help people understand. Whatever. She arranged the wedges of the lemon on the plate and then set the plate of the 3 glasses on the wooden tray with a burned-in design of cowboy riding a bucking horse. Famous Wyoming brands rimmed the edge. So you don't want her around, but yet you're defending her? I'm just trying to help with the Troy thing. She snorted. It wasn't attractive, but then she wasn't trying to attract Teague. She shouldn't even been talking to him. Hey, he stepped behind her and put his hands on her shoulders. Evidently, the snort had been more attractive than she thought. I know how you feel. Page 200, 201, 202, and 203. Sometimes you pretend you don't love somebody because you know that you're not good for her, he said. She looked down and walked away, avoiding his eyes, but he put one finger under her chin and tilted her face up to meet his. And then you try to become someone who is good for her. You do everything you can so that if you get another chance, you'll have something to offer. She blinked. What was he saying? His voice dropped into a whisper and he pulled her against him. Everything I did while you were gone, the business, the house, that was all for you. She knew she should pull away, make a joke, something, but instead she rested her head against his chest and closed her eyes. His arms tightened and she could feel his chest rising and falling, his heart beating under her cheek. I can't talk tonight. I apologize. She wanted to stay there for a while, just wanted to take a break from resisting him for a minute. It was getting to be more of a struggle. His chest rose as he took a deep breath, his arms tightened, and suddenly her heart thumped with panic. Teague, she pulled away and avoiding his eyes. I told you, my mother. He looked so hurt that she could hardly stand it, but she promised, and he knew it. If he loved her, wouldn't he be respecting her decision? Stop, okay? I told you I made a promise. Can't you respect that and stop making this harder than it has to be? No, I can't. I can't respect you letting other people tell you how to live your life. She's my mother, Teague, and she's all I have left, and you keep tempting me. Sorry, he was smiling again. That expression definitely didn't match the words. I don't mean to do it. It just happens. All right, so that was an accident back there at the house and yesterday? Pretty much, yeah. He was staring down at the toe of the boot and his lips pressed together to hold back a smile, especially the part with the goat. That was an accident. Well, yeah, if we hadn't fallen, but if it wasn't all me, how am I supposed to behave myself when you know? She cleared her throat. Well, I'm sorry. I'll try not to slip up again. He took a step slower. I said it was an accident, and I didn't say it was a mistake. He was gazing at her so intently she felt totally exposed. Hell, she even felt naked when he looked at her like that. She let out a frustrated little mew and spun back to the counter, pretending she needed to make a crucial adjustment to the lemon slice. 200, 201, here's 202 and 203. Teague sighed. Well, we better get out there. Miss Priss will be wondering what happened to us. Not that I care, Jody said. Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for her, Teague said. She's so different from everybody around here. She's an outsider. He looked away, as if something fascinating was taking place outside the window over the sink. I know what that's like. I know she's annoying, but I think we should give her a chance. Jody thought back to high school, to the whispers in the hall as Teague passed, to the gossip about his father drinking and his mother's affairs, to hurt in the eyes when he overheard Jody's mom calling him that white trash boy. Teague had been an outsider, all right, and she hadn't helped him in the way he was helping Courtney. She'd been too worried about what other people would think and about how it would affect her chances at the rodeo crown. Teague might be annoying as all get out, but he was a better person than she'd ever be. Okay, she said, I'll try to be nice for you. For me, he took a step closer, so since you're in the mood for all that, do you want to do a couple other things for me? She looked up, suddenly aware of his eyes probing with a new intimacy. The look that she backed away from before she was hurt was something like love, but it was not. She felt her body coming alive, the nerves dancing at the surface of her skin, signaling from his touch. It shot through her body, knocking down all the sensible resolutions like a pinball, hitting all the bumpers, racking up a high score. Teague licked his lips and leaned in closer, letting his hand trace the side of her face. Lowering his face to hers till their lips touched, and then the pinball zoomed straight down the middle, taking all the good sense with it. She reached up, cupping his hand behind his neck, and pulled him close. Their lips were almost touching when a noise made her turn toward the door. Page 205. Jody stalked out of the porch. Her cheeks were burning. Setting a tray of white wicker table, she plopped down on the porch swing so Courtney couldn't sit on it with Teague. No way was she going to watch Courtney cozy up to Teague like they were high school sweethearts. Something in his eye. Yeah, right. If he wasn't interested in Courtney, why was he trying to hide the fact that she almost caught them kissing? Because that's where they were headed up there. Jody headed up and touched 2 fingers to her lips. They felt hot with expectation. She could swear there was a little ache. She needed that kiss. It was hers, and he took it away. Which was a good thing, she told herself. Her mother was right. Teague might dress different now, but he really hadn't changed. She might be touched by his admission that he changed his whole life for her, but the next thing she knew, he was lying next to Courtney. Was he playing her or what? He was still difficult, still dangerous, and unpredictable. Courtney eyed the 2 wicker chairs and the porch swing and finally sat down beside Jody. Great brains think alike, Jody told herself. Courtney was making sure Teague wouldn't share that swing with Jody. Ironically, that left 2 of them sitting hip to hip like best friends. She passed a glass to Courtney and took one for herself, glancing out at the door. Where the heck was Teague? Hiding? He had to know both women were ticked at him. Maybe he was afraid to come out of the kitchen. Just when she'd given up on him, he appeared at the doorway. He saw both of the women sitting on there smiling, and Jody probably thinking how nice it was that she and Courtney was going to be such great friends. Men were idiots. Tea, she said. Thanks, he said. His tone was weirdly formal. Don't mind if I do. He rested one hand on his hip porch railing and gulped half his glass in one while both women watched. There was something about a thirsty man drinking and savoring a long cold drink on a hot summer day that made Jody warm up inside in spite of her anger. T took another glug from the glass. She shifted his weight from the railing and swirled the ice into the glass. His eyes were darting from girl to the other. Jody flashed him a sarcastic smirk. He seemed to take that as encouragement. Most men were a little lame when it came to reading social cues, but Jody decided Teague was a total dimwit. Or maybe he just saw what he wanted to see. So, he said, you want to come with me, come help, you want to, my eyes are old. You want me to come help with Russell on Saturday? No, she said. I thought you might want to introduce Vegas to the rest of the kids. You know, just see how he responds. I could use some help with that, too. Jody said, dang it, bringing up Vegas wasn't fair. That old horse was a symbol of the bond between them and the last remnant of their childhood friendship. Maybe. Oh, I could help, too. Courtney was sitting up straight and smiling at Teague. They could be my first day, and you could tell me more about your brother. Teague flashed Jody a questioning glance, and she responded by rolling her eyes. Why could men never see that women were after them? Courtney wasn't interested in Troy. She was only interested in Teague. Teague, who'd jumped like he'd been hit with a cattle prod when Courtney caught them in the kitchen. Hey, Jody, you want to go to the snag tonight? What? The snag? I wondered if you wanted to go. Was he trying to make up for the mistake by asking her out in front of Courtney? It didn't matter. She obviously needed to stay away from him. Wasn't planning on it. I could go, Courtney said with a coy smile. Todd Deemer's plan. Teague ignored Courtney as if she hadn't spoken. Always a big draw of a crowd. It would give you a chance to see who's still around and maybe meet some new folk. Jody smiled in spite of herself. The snag was Hank and Bill Arnold's bar, a wild place with a mechanical bull in the corner that had seen a lot of action. Hank Arnold was worried about liability, so he declared the bull off limits years ago, but the crowd commanded it on a regular basis, treating their friends to rides that increased in difficulty depending on the drunkenness of the volunteer operator. Maybe somebody would talk to Courtney into a bull ride. But she wasn't going anywhere, not with Teague, not with that something in my eye incident. No thanks, she said. Courtney straightened in her seat, fidgeting like a little kid who wanted to go to the circus. I'd like to go. I need to meet the natives. She trilled out at a high-pitched giggle. Get to know the local customs. Yeah, Jody, you sure? Teague asked. He looked a little desperate now. Courtney was angling for a date. Don't you want to go? No thanks, she flashed him a smile, with an oh-so-sweet smile. You two go right ahead. Great, Courtney gave Teague a perky smile. I'll meet you there. That's 205, 206, 207, and 208. We're going to skip ahead a big chunk of the book. And we're at 281. Honey, if he means that much to you, there's not anything I can do about it. Her mother squeezed her hands and shook them up and down while she tried to get her next words out. If you love him, I can't stop you. But I promise, Jody said. I don't have any right to make you keep that promise, her mother said. Come here, sit down. She led Jody to the chairs, and they both sat still, holding hands. My mother didn't like your father, you know. Jody nodded. Her grandma had died when she was little, but she remembered her as a loving but vaguely disapproving presence. She didn't like his cowboy ways, her mother continued. She said I'd be unhappy living on a ranch, not having any neighbors, dealing with animals and weather all the time. But she was right. Jody pulled her hands away and started to protest. Her mother had held up a finger to stop her. I didn't like the ranch life, you know that. I'm not an animal person. I miss going to concerts, cocktail parties, wearing nice clothes. I missed it so much, but I would have missed him more. Jody felt a faint glow of hope lighting her heart as she looked into her mother's face. I loved your father. I would have been miserable without him. Being with him had its drawbacks. She laughed shakily, but it was worth it. Every day, it was worth it. Jody nodded. The glow was growing brighter. Maybe her mother understood. You and Teague would have problems, you know. He has issues you can't possibly understand. You know that, right? Jody nodded. When I talked to him about today, I could tell he was holding in a lot, keeping his feelings from me. There will always be a part of him you don't understand. And if he's not willing to confide in you, it makes it even harder. You need to decide if you can accept that. Jody nodded again, then looked up with a hesitant smile. Does this mean that I don't have to keep my promise? Her mom smiled and shook her head. Let's change the promise, okay? Promise me that you'll think very, very hard before you pledge yourself to this man. Promise me to keep your eyes wide open, listen to your head as well as your heart. I promise, Jody said. I really do promise to think it through. Her mother sighed. Being a cowboy is on a slightly different level than being whatever Teague is. The child of an abuser, the man had a deep-seated psychological issue. Jody shifted forward and ready to defend Teague, but her mother looked away and held up her hand to stop her. It's true, and you know it. Reluctantly, Jody nodded, but she couldn't help but going for that last word. Maybe he's learned from the experience, Mom. Maybe he's really actually less likely to have that issue because he's seen the effects. Maybe, her mother sighed. I sure hope so, because I don't think anything is going to keep you away from him. That was 281, 282, 283. Here's page 331. No, you wouldn't. It's not like a natural reaction for most people like it is for me. Your mom was right, Jody. It's in me, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. Yes, there is. You can fight it, and I'll help. She pulled him close. That makes it 2 against 1. We're bound to win. Ooh, big skip here, so we got to find out what happens. You got to read the book. Okay, page 387. I'm looking for where I marked it at. Okay, 386 should have been marked, but I didn't. Could be a while, the woman said. A half an hour, maybe. Jody groaned. It's okay, Teague said. It gives us time to talk. About what? The baby. The baby? Jody winced. Shoot, that rumor had apparently moved fast. He nodded. His jaw was set in expression. She recognized it was vintage Teague, a stubborn, mulish expression that told her he made his mind up about something and he wasn't about to be dissuaded. I wanted to tell you it doesn't matter. We're a team, Jody. We're a team for when it comes to Troy, and we'll be a team for the baby, too. I don't know if you can get over all the things that happened between us. I don't know if you want what I'm offering. It's not much, but we belong together. You, me, and the baby. And Troy. He sucked in a long, suddening breath. I was worried I'd just make things worse. I was afraid that you wouldn't want to have it, the Treadwell name, because he made a vague gesture. Between the two of us, we can make that dang sure that nobody hurts him or her or whatever. He flushed and sat back and exhausted. Jody stifled a smile. The Treadwell name? She asked. Teague stared out the window as if a flock of purple aliens had just landed on the lawn outside emergency room doors. Teague, is that some kind of a proposal? He still wouldn't look at her, but he swallowed hard and nodded. Look, I know I'm not the best man in the world. I'm like a scratch and dent special, damaged goods, but I'd do anything for you, and I thought that you thought maybe that would count for something. You want to marry me? A kid should have a father. She shook her head. Teague, there is no kid. But you said I am not pregnant. He stared at her. You're not? No. What made you think that? I don't know. You said something about having kids soon, and then Darla said you brought prenatal vitamins, and then you had pickles and ice cream. She laughed. I didn't buy the prenatal vitamins. I picked them up by accident, and Darla blows everything out of proportion. She shook her head. The truth is, nobody around here can believe that I just wanted to come home. They all think that I have some inner dark secret. So there is no baby. No, I still don't understand what made you think that. I asked if you had kids, and I figured you probably did because it had been 4 years, and why would you be single? Why wouldn't you have moved on? And you said not yet or something like that, and it sounded like you meant you were going to. She shook her head. No, I never moved on. Now when it turns to play with the placemat, then why did you come back? She shrugged. The ranch partly, and partly I don't know. She shrugged and looked up at him. Like I said, I never moved on. Teague scanned Jody's face, wondering if he could have heard her right, if she was saying what he thought she was saying. All those years he spent trying to be worthy of her, had she been thinking of him too? She met his eyes, and he knew he was right, and he knew the two of them belonged together. They always had, and somehow, while he'd been building himself up, Jody had been returning to her roots, and now they were meeting in the middle, a perfect match. He scanned her eyes again just to make sure he was right, and he was. That was page 387, 388. We're down to the last two paper clips. Here we go. Page 389. I think we're going to have to give him a new name, Teague said. He turned toward the barn and whistled to Spike. Come on, Spike. The dog let out a high-pitched bark and ran over to sit at Teague's feet. I'm not sure what he's going to do around here, Teague said. A ranch dog should have a job. Jody rescued Honey Bucket from the shelter. I know, Courtney said. His job was to love Courtney. She didn't think he performed up to standard, Jody said, rolling her eyes. Bet she wishes she had him back. I know. Courtney had been convicted of murder of her father and was adjusting to life at the woman's prison in Rawlins. I feel bad for her. I'm not sure she knew what she was doing. She needs help. She knew. Sometimes I'd catch her with this look on her face, like she was plotting something. Trust me, she knew. Well, I guess Spike could love the baby. The baby? Teague creased his forehead. But you said there was no baby. There is now, Jody said, patting her stomach. That's where I went before I picked up your new pet, the doctor's office. She watched the truth dawn on him a bit by bit, and then was relieved to see a smile tilt at his lips slightly and then grow onto a full-on grin. Mine? He asked. Of course. She punched his arm. Remember that first time at your house, do I? He grinned. But best night of my life up to that point. He slugged his arm around her shoulders. There have been a bunch of good ones since. Well, we kind of forgot to be careful. Hey, I forgot my name of the day. So I guess it's understandable. He pulled her close and then held her at arm's length, scanning her face. You think it'll be okay? Doctor says it's healthy. No, I mean it's a Treadwell. I always said I wouldn't. And I always said you should. She met his eyes, trying to burn words into his brain. Teague, look at how you turned out. You grew up in this miserable trailer with parents who did nothing but fight and drink, and yet you're successful, good, and kind. She gestured toward the house. This baby's going to grow up here, a little Teague or a little Jody. He's going to have the best start a baby could have. He'll be amazing. Teague nodded and cocked his head. I don't know yet, but I have a feeling. He'll have everything you didn't, Teague. Everything we can give him, he'll turn out fine. I guess you're right. He'll be fine because he'll have the most important thing of all. What's that? He pulled her close. Two parents who love each other. You're right. She raised her face to his. They'll love each other like crazy. The end. Oh my goodness. This was a roller coaster ride. There is a little bit of a mystery of a whodunit, but I kind of told you who did it in there. Courtney, who was kind of like the third person in a triangle, if you will. So you want to find out what happened to Courtney's dad. You want to find out how did that happy ending come about, and all the juicy parts of this wonderful book. You want to pick up Cowboy Fever, that's for sure, by Joanne Kennedy, and this book gets a 10. Not a 20, but a 10 is a must read. So there you go. 10.